ready? All right. We'll call to order the meeting of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen for Tuesday, November the 17th, and we will start tonight by adopting our agenda for the meeting with a few changes. You will see that you have a memo in front of you from HR Director Braxton Tullis to add to the consent agenda a resignation in the Building and Grounds Department. We need to add at 27A to accept the bows that are on the iron fence around City Hall that were donated today. And that'll be 27A. And then we are going to change the very last item from adjourning to recessing to our work session that will be held on Monday. So with those three changes, do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll start with a mayor's report. We were so excited to get to turn on the canopy of lights and the water tower just before this meeting. We had some little helpers out there that helped us get those lights on, and it is always my very favorite time of the year. There is not a more gorgeous town than Oxford, Mississippi during the holidays. We had a visit by a gentleman named Mr. Ross last week who stopped by to inform us that he worked for Oxford Utilities in 1951 and that he remembers putting those lights up, and that each utility worker would take a strand, and that they had big bushels of the colored regular size light bulbs, and you would go and get your light bulb out of the bushel and put it in your strand to make the strands. And so we've tried to figure out exactly, and have had mixed messages on what year they started putting the lights up, but he says that he remembers doing it in the late or them being done in the late 1940s, and then he was one of the folks that did it in 1951. So that's why we do it, so that people brings back memories of people's childhood here and special things that go on in this community. A big thank you to Discount Building Supplies. We will accept their donation of all those new beautiful bows around City Hall on the iron fence that they delivered today. Our bows left a little to be desired when we got those wreaths and garlands out this year, and you'll see that we are accepting donations from two people who donated so that we could buy new bows for all of the wreaths, and then Discount Building Supply came in today and redid our bows downstairs, and we certainly thank them. There are some exciting events going on over the holidays, and go to visit Oxford's website to see a full list. But on November 27th, the Square Alliance will be holding its annual open house from 11 a.m. until 6 p.m. Santa will be on the square from 2 until 6, and there will be a socially distanced tree lighting in front of City Hall. And there'll be 2 trees this year instead of 1. The 2 beautiful holly bushes on each side of City Hall will be lit at 6 o'clock. The Christmas parade will be held on Monday, December 7th. It will be kind of a Christmas parade in reverse. So you will drive through the parade instead of the parade driving past you. So we hope that you all will join us at M Trade Park between 5:30 and 8 on Monday, December the 7th, to drive through the parade, and there will be candy, although it won't be thrown at your car. So visit Oxford's website and you'll see other things. I won't go into all the details, but there are holiday drive-in movies. We are going to have an ice skating rink out in front of City Hall for 3 days, and lots of fun things, including music on the square in the month of December. So y'all plan to have some fun. It'll be towny time. We did get our sales tax numbers today, and I can't report them with the same enthusiasm that I reported our numbers last month. But our sales tax, and as you'll recall, the numbers that we get in November are for September. So it's for 2 months prior. Our sales tax came in at $878,688.05, which is down 2% from last month, but is up 12% for the same month last year. Hard to imagine. Food and beverage is $279,739.91, which is up 1% from last month, but down 16% for the same month last year. Hotel and motel taxes came in at $19,111.92, which is down 44% from last month and down 61% for the same time last year. So we will continue to tighten the belt, and we will continue to spend money as responsibly and efficiently as we can on behalf of our taxpayers. I have been meeting with city department heads and staff regarding ways that we can address this uncertainty and respond effectively to the challenges to our economy over the past 6 or 8 months. I've read reports that say that a pandemic, like any other crisis, kind of has 3 stages. It's response, recovery, and rebuilding. We felt like we were kind of moving into recovery, although with the numbers going up around us, although ours aren't going up as severely, we're kind of bouncing back to that response stage right now. But I did want you to know that we are looking at the opportunity to reimagine how we use some of our public spaces and ways that those public spaces can support our small businesses. And we're looking for ways to implement initiatives to support local businesses and residents by reducing some of our bureaucratic process. So I know that will come as a welcome relief to a lot of people. As part of that process, we sent out a survey this week to 1,300 businesses and to get their input and suggestions on ways that the city can be supportive to our business community. And the board will be reviewing those responses, and we will determine how we can move forward and be more helpful to our business community in the coming weeks. We'll actually have a work session on Monday where we will start to develop a more solid plan. So with that, I will ask you to authorize the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on November the 3rd, 2020.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, authorize the approval of accounts for all city departments.
Mayor, I'll make that motion, although, is there a reason we didn't get the claims docket until just a few minutes ago, Ashley?
We had, sorry, Ashley doesn't have a mic, she's coming to it.
That's okay.
It had a minor error on it that we had to find before we attached it. I didn't want to attach it in correct document.
Okay, well, I looked over it as good as I could, so I'll make that motion.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I ask you to consider the consent agenda with the one addition of the memo of a resignation in building and grounds.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, at this time, we are excited to recognize the Oxford High School boys cross country team. Guys, if y'all want to come in, and I'm going to ask Alderman Addy to take his mic. You have a mic right there?
I do.
Okay, and I'm going to give him the honors because he, in this announcement, is not only an alderman, but also a proud daddy of one in this group. I'll let y'all guess which one since they're all masked.
There you go. I want to recognize the Oxford High School boys cross-country team. They came in second in the 6A state meet a couple of weekends ago. Our runners were Chase Rose and Luke Johnson, Ethan Knight, Aiden Addy, Timon Masamura, Michael Chang, Brooks Austin, and our alternate was Charlie Ligon. Chase Rose was our individual overall state 6A champion. And Luke, Luke Johnson placed third. Ethan Knight earned All-State along with Chase and Luke. And just want to say again, congratulations. Thank you.
Guys,
Proud of
thank
y'all.
you. Thank you for representing the community.
I think I missed Chris Patton, of course, is our coach. Paul Garner is one of our coaches also. Sorry I missed you. Sorry. Looked across, I saw the gray, missed the blue. Thank you again, guys.
Thank y'all. All right, next I will ask the board to adopt a resolution of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen of the City of Oxford, Mississippi, authorizing and directing the issuance of taxable combined water and sewer system revenue bonds, Series 2020B, the City of Oxford, in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $5,800,000 for the purpose of advance refunding and defeasing all of the outstanding $8,500,000 City of Oxford, Mississippi combined water and sewer system revenue bonds. let you take it from there.
So what we're asking is for the board to approve this resolution, which authorizes and directs the issuance of water and sewer refunding bonds in an amount not to exceed $5,800,000. And this refunds your 2011 water sewer bonds for savings. Mr. Pittman is here to talk about the savings. This will be at an interest rate of 1.55%, so it's an excellent rate.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Will be placed with the first out of Hattiesburg. We're asking approval of the documents, which is an escrow trust agreement, a private placement agreement, and the commitment to finance, and then a couple of other, the G17 letter and the IRMA letter of the financial advisor and the placement agent. So we're asking for approval.
Absolutely. Does anyone have any questions? Steve, you want to give us kind of an overview of the good news of savings?
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Steve Pittman. I've been here several times. I don't know that I've addressed you, actually.
You haven't?
So I'm
not sure I
glad to
believe
address
that.
you, Board. As Sue said, this is an interest rate savings transaction, and the savings to the city will be approximately $50,000 a year for the next 10 years, or a total of $500,000. That's a 8.5% present value savings. The statute requires that you have a 2% present value savings, and so you've got 8.5 present savings, value savings. So it's a no-brainer to do the
It is a
transaction.
no-brainer. Yes, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Sue or for Steve?
Move we adopt a resolution
And all of the other things?
and everything.
The whole list of documents that,
$500,000? Yes.
that's right. Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? All right, any comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you, Sue and Steve, for being here tonight. We appreciate it. All right, next we will consider an appeal from Michael Joe and Cheryl Cannon of the Historic Preservation Commission's denial of case 596, a request to demolish the existing structure located at 1009 Hayes Avenue. I'm gonna let Kate go first, Jay, if you don't mind.
Good evening. Y'all have to forgive me for reading, but as you guys know from the report, it's a little complicated, so I'm going to stick to the script. This is an appeal of Historic Preservation Commission case number 596, a certificate of appropriateness request to demolish the existing dwelling at 1009 Hayes Avenue. Applicants Michael Joe and Cheryl Cannon seek to build a new house in place of the existing historic house. The existing house is a contributing structure in the South Lamar Historic District. While we do not know the exact date of construction, based on the Queen Anne detailing, its estimated date of construction is circa 1890. In historic districts, buildings are classified as contributing or non-contributing. Contributing structures, like the house at 1009 Hayes Avenue, are classified as such because they add to the historical integrity or architectural qualities that make the historic district, in this case listed both locally and federally on the National Register, significant. The frame, gable, and wing house features some of the most unique Queen Anne detailing in the city. The proposed demolition was requested after work had begun on approved renovations to the building, which included an addition. These changes were found to meet the recommendations of the Oxford Design Guidelines and were approved by the Historic Preservation Commission at the March, April, and August meetings. Staff was called to the site by the project contractor, J.W. McCurdy, on September 1st. At this meeting, staff was informed that the applicants authorized the contractor to pour a new slab foundation for the building by lifting the house and replacing the existing brick piers. The entire house was lifted and now sits atop beams as a part of this effort. This work was not discussed at prior COA hearings and was not authorized. Mr. McCurdy informed staff that there were several other issues with the building, namely termite damage and rot, and he also mentioned difficulties with bringing the building up to code. Mr. McCurdy informed staff at this meeting that the applicant would be applying for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish the building at the September Historic Preservation Commission meeting. That meeting was held on September 21st. Mr. McCurdy and applicant Cheryl Cannon spoke to the commission about the request, seeking to demolish the existing building and build a reproduction of it in its place. The application claims that the house was in poor condition and was unsafe. The commission discussed the condition of the house in great detail with the applicant, including the importance of the building to the city's architectural character. The certificate of appropriateness request was tabled at this meeting. The applicant did not provide plans for the reproduction building showing what original material would be retained and what new materials would be used in the new building proposed by the applicant. The commission also encouraged the applicant to consider a plan to restore the existing building rather than tearing it down. The discussion resumed at the October 19th meeting of the commission. Plans were received showing the proposed new building, which would reuse some elements of the existing building, though the majority of the building would be new materials. The commission questioned Corey Auger, the architect on the project who was representing the applicant, about the proposed demolition. Commissioners noted that there was no exploration of plans to restore the house. Jay Hughes appeared on behalf of the applicant and said that the canons were ready for a vote and to move along in the COA process. Mr. McCurdy was also present, and he discussed the engineering report with the commission. The commission reviewed the criteria for demolition as laid out in the preservation ordinance and agreed that the building is important architecturally and historically to the community and that the building would be difficult to replicate. The commission voted unanimously to deny the request to demolish the historic building. 8 commissioners voted to deny, with 1 recusal. The applicant seeks to appeal this denial and continues to assert that after demolition, the exact same house will be built according to design plans approved by the Historic Preservation Commission. This is true for the new additions that were approved by the commission. What the applicant proposes for the historic resource today, an appeal of the denial, was not approved by the commission. The applicant proposes a reproduction of an existing historic building using new materials and methods of construction. To build this reproduction, the existing historic building would have to be demolished. Much of the applicant's appeal focuses on portions of the property that are not up to code or are deteriorated. Some of this can be expected when purchasing an old home, particularly without an inspection to provide information on the existing issues with the house. Additionally, further damage was done to the property in the attempt to lift the house for the new foundation. Bringing up a historic building to today's standards and codes can require a high level of intervention, even in buildings that are in excellent condition. Problems like the appeal lists are commonly found in older buildings and can be remediated within the bounds of the city's framework for historic districts, the municipal code, and the Oxford Design Guidelines. Purchasers in historic districts are aware of the rules in place, and by purchasing in the historic district, commit to follow those city ordinances. Staff has received letters, emails, and text, both in support and in opposition of the applicant's request to demolish this house. Those were included in your packets and the public record, and you'll notice we received one this afternoon, and I put that at all of your seats. The commission and staff have indicated a solution other than that proposed by the applicant, that the building be maintained and restored rather than demolished and reproduced. I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have.
Kate, there was something in there about somebody from Archives and History coming to look at the house. Did that ever happen?
It did not. So the Department of Archives and History is aware of all of our meetings, and they receive the minutes from those meetings. And they provided a letter that was included in the packet about possibly meeting at the house and stating that it's important architecturally in the district. The representative was going to be in town on a date that the applicants were out of town, and so that meeting never occurred.
Do they offer, when they do come, do they offer advice on how to restore, or what do they do when they come?
They do. So the reason that they receive the minutes from our meetings is that they sort of provide technical support to people like in my position and people in planning departments across the state. Mm-hmm. We're a certified local government community, which means that we perform the necessary trainings and things like that to receive that assistance from Archives and History. So often they have a whole technical assistance department. So they'll often come out and help the homeowner figure out a plan to move forward on a project.
Well, I mean, just for starters, it would seem like that would be a good thing to take advantage of. Mm-hmm. if we're gonna try to get that house restored.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions of Kate from the board? All right, if not, Jay, if you want to come up.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Okay.
My name's Jay Hughes. I know some of you. I'm gonna plug this in. I think it's turning.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I'll try to be brief, but first and foremost, I do want to say thank you to the members of the commission, the chairman Gardner, the chairman Gardner and Scruggs and Jordan. It is a time-consuming, and it's often thankless, and you have to make a lot of hard decisions. I know, I've been there, and I've appeared before the commission many times, and I have the utmost respect for what they do. But however, like courts of law, there's an appeal process for a reason. And that's because sometimes when you're shooting at a target, you might miss just a little bit, or there might be a gray area when you're trying to call balls and strikes. So as the Oxford Code recognizes, sometimes the commission does need to refer to and defer to licensed experts in the field or the planning area, contractors, engineers, architects. Boy, this is strange with this mask at the mic. But most importantly is that in this case, the engineers, the architect, the contractors, and everybody met with the planning department and the commission multiple times for the better part of a year. And they did everything in their part to save the original home. This isn't the home here. I'll talk about this home in a moment. But multiple revisions were made at the cost of tens of thousands of dollars of private money of these homeowners. And when all of the appearances and edits were made and we met with the commission and everything, a certificate of appropriateness was issued. Now, what's important is, as it relates to what Alderman Ant now asked, as to the MDAH, they do provide a great service. The notice that the meeting was coming, that they were going to be here, was only 3 days before the meeting actually could happen. And we responded that we'll meet with you, and that's in your packet as well, but we can't meet that day. My clients aren't in town, the contractor's not in town, and here's what we'd like to know. What do y'all offer, et cetera? And our response was, well, they can't come because that's the only day they have. So it wasn't a refusal to meet with them. We would have loved to have met with them. Now, what's important is that once the permit was issued, our licensed contractor got with his licensed and bonded shoring company to raise the property to put a structurally sound and safe foundation in that. When it was being raised, for the first time, it became evident of what was going on with the cracking behind the 100-year-old plaster. Multiple renovations and years of neglect and everything, so they started pulling off the plaster of the main structure, and that's where they realized for the first time that they had paid for a full house, the full price that was structurally shot. The Cannons did remain, contributed resolute to their commitment, and spent several thousand more dollars to their architect to go out and meticulously document every dimension of everything on that original property so that they could try to reproduce it or save as much as they could. So the standard that we're dealing with here is called arbitrary and capricious. It means, did we treat this house any differently than any other historic home or contributing resource in the district? And the reason that that's important is because even if it's unintentional, which it could very well be, the answer in this case is yes. And why is that? Because I've heard so much, and they're so right, that this is such a beautiful home from the appearance from 35 feet away. But the reality is it's what's behind it that makes a difference. There's no degree of importance as far as if you've got a 1920s bungalow that's only 800 square feet and it's a contributing property, it's no less important than this Italianate style. They're all entitled to the same thing, the same treatment by the commission. So all I wanted to do with you this evening is talk to you briefly about three things, and that is shoring, raising and shoring the house. There was just presented that the board didn't approve or consider raising the house, shoring it, elevating it. The fact is, the very same licensed contractor on this job hired the very same licensed shoring company on that house and elevated it without a single objection, a single permit, or a single approval. Raising houses is something we do. Y'all seen the pictures of me with the houses I raised on North 14th Street. The reality is, it was done before by the same contractor and shoring company without seeking approval of this commission. There was nothing nefarious about it. They thought they were doing the same thing they'd done less than a 9-iron away. Now, equally important is when we talk about replacing the windows, which is what that report shows in there. It is a fact that multiple homes in the historic district that are contributing resources and have been approved just in recent years or in recent months all have new, environmentally friendly, but aesthetically pleasing windows. You shouldn't penalize somebody because they're moving into an historic home to waste energy and have leaks of wind and rain and everything else and bugs. So I take exception from the arbitrary and capricious that somehow this house is a different historic property and it shouldn't be allowed to have windows. You're treating it differently for that reason. And then there was I noticed in the appeal and the argument, it was about using cement board siding instead of the wood that's on it now, or we assume it's wood. We don't know, it's painted, and you're 35 feet away from it, unless you're invited to their house. And this is an example of it. Cement board nowadays even has an artisan series that is designed strictly for historic homes. And that's because it's termite proof, it's dry rot proof, it's fireproof, it's a lower insurance factor for the homeowner, and it's more structurally sound. So this house, they were taking exception to replacing the damaged dry rotted wood and replacing it with siding that's cement board. Well, each of these homes that are in our district that have been approved, that we're contributing, have the same cement board that our applicant wants to put on theirs. Every one of them. So what we're talking about, are we treating this property different than others? They have done everything in their power, particularly spending over $80,000 trying to save the original home. Then, as to this map, when it said go talk to your neighbors, we didn't just give notice. We didn't just put a sign. Cheryl and Michael Joe spent Saturday and Sunday mornings and afternoons walking and talking to every single neighbor that you can see there. Now, is it important to Oxford? Yes, but it's very important to those that live next to this home that was vacant a couple of years, that has been the result of years or decades of neglect and termite and rain and wind and everything. These neighbors support the renovations as long as it reproduces what was there. And that is what they want to do. Now, what's also important is, sure, we have seen millions spent on the LQC Lamar House, but that was public dollars, not private dollars. The code section says, is it feasible to reproduce or to restore? Feasible is simple. Is it possible to easily do, conveniently, and carry out a plan successfully? That doesn't mean without regard to cost. What it means is it feasible? The planning department's opinion just a minute ago was that the construction team damaged the structure in an attempt to do unapproved work. I've already shown that they've never had to approve raising a house before. But the construction team here didn't cause water rot, dry rot, termite infestation, termite damage, missing beams and supports, shady additions and remodels, or decades of neglect. So in considering the application that's before you, and a clear way in treating it as other homes that have previously been approved, there are 4 things. Considering the individual significance of the resource. There's no question that this is an individually significant resource. We got that. That's why they paid full price for this thing. Then we consider the contribution of the architectural character. Well, there's no question of the architectural character of the home, and that's why they're trying to reproduce it and protect it. And then consider the neighboring property values. Well, improving a dilapidated and vacant structure will improve property values, and that's why the neighbors are in support of this. And then the commission shall consider the difficulty or impossibility of reproducing such a resource. It can be done. And what I have back here is 35 feet away from you, and what's on one side came off of the house this morning, and the other one is a cement board and artisan profile for historic homes. You can't tell what's behind it because it's painted. It's the same profile. Why would we want to deprive a homeowner of a safer, fireproof, environmentally friendly home? So what we propose to do is reproduce that front, to do exactly what we said we would, what is in the record, that shows pulling off each of these beautiful, beautiful detailed parts of the home, preserving them, duplicating what can be duplicated. With dental molding is dental molding, we can put that back. And then putting these original elements back on the house and going ahead and being feasible about rebuilding, reproducing exactly what is there, and then going forward with what the commission already approved after multiple meetings. So in closing, the canons respectfully request that the Board of Aldermen reverse the decision of the commission and allow them to build the home that they already had approved and demolish and replace the original structure as it is and should be, with the architectural elements as presented being preserved and put back on the property. I thank you, and I'm open for any questions or comments at all.
All right, board, are there questions
I
for
have a
Mr.
question,
Hughes?
Jay. I don't know if you can answer this. It might need to be Kate. But if the house is, if it's a reproduction, is it still a contributing historic building, or is it just a reproduction?
I would say, I'm going to defer to Kate, but I'll say to the eye of the neighbor and the beauty of the beholder, it's still a historic property. As far as what the state guidelines are, I'll defer to the planning department.
No, it's a reproduction, it's not a contributing structure.
It wouldn't be, it would not be on the National Register anymore. It would not be part of the South Lamar Historic District,
It would be a non-contributing.
non-contributing.
It's not on the National Register. It's recognized as being a contributing historic property. And there is a legal distinction between those two.
Okay, well, that would be a shame. Is there any middle ground where if they keep a certain part of the house, like say, you know, and I always think about historic preservation as the most important part being the facade of the house. Is there any middle ground where if they kept that part where all the architectural features are and did rebuilt the back, that it would be contributing?
No, ma'am, I'm not sure what the exact threshold is. We would have to ask, because you know, our local districts are different from National Register districts.
Yeah.
If the house is demolished, I don't believe that it could be contributing even if it's built back with new material.
With parts of,
I don't think there's a threshold of like, if it's 50%, then it's contributing.
Really?
Because you'll notice in our historic districts, a lot of houses that have kept the same form, like there are a lot of smaller bungalows, like Jay mentioned earlier, that have the same form and massing as when they were built, but they have new windows, vinyl siding,
Yeah.
all of that, and they're not contributing.
they're not contributing.
For purposes of the National Register. So I don't see a way to demolish the house and it still be a contributing structure.
But we are like,
Let me ask you this, are they, you know, the bungalows you speak about not being a contributing factor, are they not a contributing factor because of the material that they used, or?
You can be non-contributing for several different reasons. So when the historic districts were surveyed for the purposes of the National Register, there are some buildings that were deemed non-contributing because of material alterations. There are some that are deemed non-contributing because they were either popped up or added onto in a way that there's not enough historic integrity for the building to be considering contributing to the architectural character of the district.
So,
And it can be frustrating for people because there's not, it's really at the discretion of the surveyor and the Department of Archives and History. There's not like a number of, if you have this much original material, it's contributing.
so
It's just a yes or no, basically.
Right.
I mean, there's no.
there's no, I mean, all right, let me ask you this, are there any contributing historic homes in that district that are less than 25 years old?
No. To be considered for the National Register, the building generally has to be 50 years old. There have been some cases where, like, for instance, a magnificent postmodern building where, like, a president lived has been placed on the National Register, but it would have to meet several of the criteria.
All right, so but this house is not on the National Register.
It's a contributing structure in a National Register district.
Okay.
So, as Jade pointed out, that's different things. You can have your house individually listed, like, say, Amadale, or the LQC Lamar House, or something like that. For buildings that are as a part of a district, contributing means that they are of architectural significance to the National Park Service and the National Register. So there's not a huge difference other than some people choose to individually list.
I would offer that I don't want to get lost in a distinction of contributing or non-contributing. A house in a state of disrepair that's a contributing resource is of less value to the neighborhood and the district as a whole as one that is livable and one that has been prepared and restored or been reproduced. In this case, just because it would be considered a non-contributing home, if it looks exactly the same and it's beautiful and a family's living in it, I represent that has more contribution value to that historic district than one that's just vacant and in a state of disrepair.
Well, of course.
And it would still have to come before the HPC for anything in the future for anyone else to do anything. And we're not talking about an inexpensive home or project here either, so.
So I mean, is he correct in that it has to come before that historic preservation if they do change?
If something after this happens.
I mean, my question is what is this house gonna be like in 50 years? Is it gonna be a historic contributing to that district then?
I don't believe so, because since it's a reproduction, it's hard for me to predict what the National Register will consider important in 50 years. But since it's no longer an 1890s building and material, method of construction, all of those measures, I think it'll just be a non-contributing reproduction of them.
So how much of the structure would they have to keep for it to be a contributing?
Yeah, that's.
Can you ask that?
How much of the structure would they have to keep for it to be contributing? Because, I mean, the first picture that he put up there was the old Brown house, the Tatum Brown's house, and when they took that thing to studs, it looked like one original piece of wood sitting there, and then they built around that one piece of wood. So
I spoke to NTAH about it, and in other rehabilitation projects I've seen in other cities where I've worked, generally the house would remain standing, the existing brick pier foundation would be rebuilt and reinforced rather than pouring a slab. You would preserve as much original material as possible, which is what's recommended in the guidelines. So that would mean any siding that can be reused would be scraped and painted and new mill siding to match. Any existing windows would be retained. You could put in a storm if you worry about energy efficiency. You know, the tenets of the ordinance state that as much original material as can be preserved should be preserved. So, does that help?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we've heard, or that's what I was hearing a while ago, they're going to say everything they can.
We will, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but let's be realistic at the number of homes in the historic districts that we have seen redone when the only thing standing was the front wall with openings for a door and window. Are they still contributing after they're rebuilt? I don't know. The factor here is not whether it's going to be contributing or non-contributing in the district. It's going to remain in the district, and it's going to have a value of contribution to the neighbors from having been reproduced and restored with as much original product as we've already put in the record of what we'll have. It'll be a beautiful home. Whether in 50 years it's considered to be a contributing resource because it was a copy, I don't know. I can tell you this, that every single bungalow in this city was a reproduction of a green and green architectural style from South Carolina, and those that weren't were Sears Roebuck homes that were shipped in on a rail. They were copies of everything else, so it didn't make them any more or less unique. Again, we don't distinguish between how pretty something is. It's either contributing or it isn't. And we didn't have a say in that decision. A surveying company came through in 1999, surveyed all the houses, and either checked yes or no. So you had homes that were copies, you had homes that were modular homes, and you had ones that came in through Sears Roebuck, and they're just as contributing as this house, or just as non-contributing.
Well, we're going to be doing that again, and that doesn't matter. I mean, we're not talking about old homes that were or were not contributing, but this is really uncomfortable for me. It probably is for the other board members, because we don't know enough about this stuff to be able to come up with recommendations that are specific. But I do want to say that the Historic Preservation Commission, I know that before they can approve a demolition, they have to know what's going to be put back. And I don't know how specific the information that they got on this restoration is. I don't know if they have enough information.
If you'll put that up, for $8,000 in drawings, we couldn't be any more specific. We're down to within 1/16 of an inch on that drawing, that's the plan that's in there, of everything that will be preserved in the original house that will be there.
Janice, this reminds me a lot of, I know you were on the board, I know I was too, I don't know how many other people in Preston, of the tan house over across from the Avon house, and it was one of those situations where it just was not recoverable, although I don't even think they paid full price for it. I certainly don't think that the Cannons here are trying to run something over on everybody. I think they legitimately wanted to renovate this home.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to say, this really reminds me a lot of that, and we made sure that the TAN had to, do it to the exact specs, although it went a little taller, but we wanted the exact look of the house that was there.
Well, that didn't turn out that great, but it is a similar situation.
Right.
So, to the Cannons, it's going to be specifically exact what is there.
Yes.
And same look on the front. We can't tell. We're going to have the stained decorative.
We're trying to pull it up right now. I see.
We've got it in our packets.
Okay. Yes, that's why we spent all of that and went back to the commission and said, here's what we can preserve. And they said, well, no, we want to see what your plan is to preserve the whole thing. It was kind of like trying to prove a negative, where all of our experts had said, we can't. And we're saying, well, this is the best we can do. And so we'll remove all those pieces and put them back on. Some of the pictures in the close-ups that I showed you that are in the packet are not that complicated. They're dental mold, which is little squares, space, square, space, square, space.
Yeah.
That's easily reproduced. They fell in love with the home that is there. They have not been able to go forward because of a structural integrity failure that happened long before they ever had it, and that they couldn't see behind decades of sheetrock and paste and mud. So yes, they plan to reproduce what is there and salvage as much of what they can, and they've submitted the plan of what that is.
And I'll just add that the plans that you're seeing were seen and considered by the Preservation Commission at that October meeting, and we believe they were sufficient for the commission to make a decision. They're very detailed.
Okay.
So the commission did consider those.
They did consider. Okay.
And again, that is an example back there of being able to reproduce exactly what's on the house with the exact profile, but with new materials.
I would really feel a whole lot better about this, and I know it's going to delay stuff, if we could get somebody from Archives and History to come up and either help with how this could be restored, or in the least help with how the reproduction can approximate the original house more closely. I mean, I just feel that level of expertise is something we need. I don't know that there's anybody in Oxford who has that knowledge.
Well, respectfully, I disagree with that, because, again, there's no degrees of houses here. They're either contributing or they're not. If we're gonna hold this one to an MDH standard, that's a very slippery slope, are we going to require that of all homes that are contributing resources in the district? And this is done by an Oxford contractor and Oxford shoring, and that is on the gateway to the square. And it didn't involve waiting and delaying. We're into this almost 11 months now, and the Cannons want to build their home.
Yeah.
But that was done all by Oxford skilled craftsmen, and I think that they're more than capable of doing that. By the same token, this property right here, and I'm not doing anything except, well, I guess blowing my own horn, but the reality is the property that was right next door to the LQC Lamar house, right there, that's next door to a national landmark. That had holes in the floor with trees growing in the middle of it. What it had that's different from this one is the seals were all intact. The walls were all intact. And we were able to raise it and preserve it. Again, it's got some siding, it's got some windows. That was done by Oxford people. I do believe we have the skilled personnel to do it. We've done that with all the houses around here. So I respectfully suggest that it's an unfair imposition to again wait on them when we already offered to meet with them and they wouldn't, and to delay this for MDAH.
I mean, I'm looking at the pictures, and I don't know if the audience can see this, but it's basically a studs and the facade, and I just,
You're looking at the pictures of it today. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
today.
just was seeing if that could get to the same picture as well.
It's the back of it is open, and what I would call studs are blacked in, and when they go to redoing that, there's going to be a lot of that torn out because of termite damage, because of water damage. Is going to be, I go back to the brown house where it had that one or two little wall right there, and then they built around that. I don't just feel like that if it's going to be recreated exactly the way it is today, I think this is something we should allow them to do. Is my thoughts.
Yeah, I just hate it for Oxford, because we call ourselves historic Oxford, and then you walk down the street and somebody says, well, is that a historic home? No, it's not. It's a reproduction. I mean, I'm just thinking of the big picture for the and I hate it for the Cannons. I mean, while I was going through this, I kept thinking about all that they do for the community, and I kept telling myself, this is about the house.
I hear you, and I understand, I sympathize, I empathize with that, but it's not just about a house, it's about their house, and I've showed you 50.
Yeah.
There's exactly 50 I've put on here that have been held to a different standard. We're asking to be held to the same standard.
So all those houses were demolished and reproduced?
Some of them were, yes, ma'am. All of them either have hardy siding, new windows, or were with nothing but a facade left. I'm not going to point out specific houses because of neighbors and respect.
Yeah.
But we all know the ones that you walk by and there's a 2x4 up front, and then all of a sudden it's still a contributing resource, but it's a brand new house.
Well, I hope.
And this house has a slab under it too now.
So right there, when it's finished, it's going to look like that.
That's what the front will look like, yes. That's what the original structure will look like, the original structure. The other part would look like what's already been approved by the Historic Preservation Commission, which is in addition to the house in the back.
So the plans have already been approved?
Yes.
Okay.
For the addition.
For the
Yes.
addition?
For the addition.
So what we're asking is for permission to reproduce the structure as it currently exists, using as many of the resources that exist on it right now, according to schematic we gave you, and to build the addition, the plans that have already been approved by the
yeah.
HPC.
So the front of the house, the original house, the Historic Preservation Commission has seen that, and they can base their decision on demolition based on that being what's gonna replace it?
Yes, ma'am. So the addition plans were already approved.
Right.
For the March, April, and August meetings. So at the September meeting, the demolition request was tabled because there weren't plans showing what would be built back. And so the plans that you see in your packet were seen and considered by the Preservation Commission prior to their denial vote.
Okay.
And respectfully, Alderman Ant, now, the process, I want to make sure that we're open about the process. As far as going back to the HPC, that's not part of this process. In fact, the code doesn't allow it. We have been rejected by the commission, and the right of appeal is to this body to make a decision. And it doesn't go back for them because they've already approved the addition. We're only asking as it relates to the original part.
We have many times, and you know this, we've sent appeals back to the original commission with suggestions that could solve the problem, so I'm not buying that.
I'm only going what I was told.
Okay.
They've done a complete survey on the whole front.
Yeah.
Down to, like you said, 1/16 of an inch, is that what you?
With the survey and the plans approved, and if it's gonna look exact like it's gonna look, like it looks now today, I think we should allow them to move forward with the project, in my opinion. So, I'll make a motion to that effect.
I'll second that.
All right, so
I'll second.
we have a motion and 2 seconds to allow the demolition of this existing structure at 1009 Hayes Avenue. Are there any other comments before I call for a vote? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
All right, so the motion passes 6-1.
Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you. All right. And now we have an announcement by Alderman Jason Bailey.
Y'all might want to stick around for this one. So since we are the #1 Christmas town in America, and that our joyous time is here, and we just turned on the lights, I'm here to announce that December 15th, Tuesday, is our Ugly Christmas Sweater Contest. And we encourage all Oxonians to wear their ugly Christmas sweater that day to show the Christmas spirit. I think it's something fun to do during this time of COVID, and we've been locked up and dealt with pandemics and dealt with masks, and so let's spread a little cheer. We're gonna have a contest in City Hall for the best ugly Christmas sweater or outfit. And this year and years to come, we're gonna have a trophy. So something a little fun during this time. I know a lot of people have been wondering what that announcement was gonna be, so there it is.
There we go.
Merry
So
Christmas.
Hey,
December 15th.
Alderman Bailey, I think that, ugly is really in the eyes of the beholder. And I think
I know
that
your
we
mom
really
tells
should
you that all the
call it, that we should call it the unique Christmas sweater. Because, some people may like it.
Well, Elvis, we can do that.
But you should wear a matching
Okay.
mask. You should have a mask that matches your ugly Christmas sweater.
There you
or
go.
unique, or what at most outrageous, or however you'd like to define that.
So y'all get ready.
All right.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, and you have this in your packet, is to adopt a proclamation recognizing November as Pulmonary Hypertension Awareness Month. Could I get a motion to accept this month as Pulmonary Hypertension Awareness Month?
Yes.
I move we accept.
All right. Second. A motion and second, all in favor? Any opposed? Accept the financial report and audit for fiscal year ended 9/30/2019. Ashley, or?
I'm gonna have to turn it over to Brian Wallace.
Okay. Yep.
Read through it all.
Welcome, Brian.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you for being here.
I'm Brian Wildman, come before you each year. Jonathan Haygood, one of my partners, is back here tonight as well. We appreciate the opportunity to continue to serve the city of Oxford as your auditors. This has been a challenging year. I know for you as a city, it has been for us as auditors as well. But we do have your audited financial statements there before you. I handed out a copy before we started. I have a one-page summary.
Wonderful. Thank you.
About 95 pages.
that.
I have it down to one page, just summarizing. You can flip to those pages if you like, or you can just follow along on the summary with me. On page 2 of that document is our independent auditor's report. It is still a qualified opinion for one qualification, and that deals with your utility funds, to where all of the meter deposits for all utility funds are presented in your electric fund financial statements.
Right.
So other than that, your audit opinion is a clean audit opinion. You can see a little history there. We started doing your audit in back 2013. In that year, you had 5 qualifications. In 14, it was down to 2, and you've had the 1 qualification for the past few years. Page 4 through 12 of that document is the management's discussion and analysis. I'm not going to go through that. I'm going to hit the highlights down below. Dealing with the financial statements on page 13, reports that the total assets of the city increased by $23,535,000. And just to give you a little bit of background on what that number is, it's actually, your total assets are $282 million. And that's after accumulated depreciation on all of your fixed assets and capital assets has been recognized of about $104 million. So your gross assets are $387 million for the city of Oxford. Your total cash reserves did decrease slightly by $4,673,000. Most of that is related to, in the 2018 year, you issued a large debt obligation, $22 million. You still had about $9.5 million of that on hand at the end of 2018. That was expended during this year. That's the reason for your cash decrease of about $4.6 million from the previous year. Page 14 reports that your total liabilities increased by $14,940,000. That's an increase up to $144 million. It's a lot, but remember I told you your total assets are $283 million. Liabilities are only $144 million. The biggest reason for the increase, you did issue new debt of about $14.3 million. $12.4 million in your utility funds, and you issued about $1.9 million of some special obligation notes. Your total net position, which is your assets minus your liabilities, increased by $6,731,000 up to $136 million. Page 18, dealing with your general fund, which is the largest fund of the city other than your utility funds, of course. The revenues for your general fund increased by $1,278,000, and those revenues are about $30,182,000. Increase in fund balance of your general fund was $2,146,000. That's the excess of revenues over expenses. Things that primarily drive your revenues. Your sales tax revenues in this particular year increased by $352,000, which was about a 3.6% increase. Your special taxes, which is your hotel, motel, food, and beverage tax, increased by $266,000, or 6.1%. Now, one thing that's interesting about the city of Oxford, it tells of the strength of your city and the economy in your city. Your total sales tax revenues and special taxes are $14,670,000. Now, just over $10 million of that is just general sales tax. So I told you your general fund, total revenues are $30 million. exactly 1/3 of that comes from sales tax dollars.
Which is very frightening in a pandemic.
It is very frightening. In fact, it is a very positive thing to say about your city, and
It
hopefully when things return and recover,
Right.
you will be back to that position. But yes, it is a very frightening thing in these times. Page 24, on your utility funds, the electric fund reflects income before operating transfers. That's a net income before transfers of $1,784,000. Water and sewer had an income or an increase of $474,000. And the environmental services fund, which back in 2018 you moved over to an enterprise type fund or a business type activity, did have a decrease of $551,000. That fund in the early years of its existence. Page 25 and 35 reports what you're doing to improve your infrastructure to make sure you can meet the demands of the growth of your municipality. The city's invested $14,394,000 into the plant and equipment and infrastructure of the utility funds during this year. You also invested $21,940,000 into your buildings, equipment, and infrastructure of your governmental activities. So that's over $35 million, actually over $36 million that you have invested into your municipality for growth. Page 38 through 84 gives details of your long-term debt. I noticed earlier you were refunding some of those obligations. On page 38, and then again back on 84, presents all of your debt obligations. They totaled up at this time to $74.5 million. This was up almost $10 million from the previous year because, as I referenced earlier, you issued $12.4 million of utility type fund debt and $1.9 million of special obligations. You did pay back just over $6 million worth of debt during this fiscal year. Page 41 through 46 deals with the public employees' unfunded pension liability. And that number for this year was $49,204,000. Remember earlier I told you your total liabilities were $144 million. $49 million of that is your unfunded PERS allocation from the state. Something that you really don't have control over, determined by actuaries and by the Public Employees Retirement System. Page 85 reports your total federal award expenditures. That's federal grant dollars you received. This year it was $3,207,000. That's up from about $2.5 million in the previous year. Then on page 91 has our summary of auditor results dealing with the different compliance requirements for governmental auditing standards and for the uniform guidance on the federal money. This year on page 92, and I made some revisions to that this afternoon. I talked with Ashley. So the copy I just handed you has the final revisions on the exceptions, or what we call findings. You do have 4 this year that are improving, and we feel like in the near future we can eliminate those. But again, giving you a little history, back in 2014 you had 12 findings, then it dropped to 9 to 7, 5 last year, 4 this year.
Way to go, Ashley. That comes from a lot of hard work.
Comes from a lot of hard work and a lot of time.
I know, it's your whole department, but that does not go unnoticed, and that's awesome.
Okay. Do I have any questions on that?
Nope, move we approve.
Are there any questions or comments? Looks great, Brian. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you. We truly appreciate the relationship we have with the city of Oxford. We look forward to continuing to serve you.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
have a motion and a second, so all those in favor of accepting this report and audit?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Next on our agenda is to discuss COVID-19 current restrictions and guidelines and the current executive orders. And get Jimmy to come and give us our meeting update on numbers.
You've got a handout. This is a comparison chart similar to the last meeting of the same counties we looked at last time. You can see what the increase has been total over the past 8 days. with this chart. Today, the state reported 905 cases with 36 new deaths, and we now have a total of 2,912 cases, an increase of 15 from yesterday. And over the past 8 days, we went up 195 cases, and you can see what the reference counties have gone up.
What is the governor's criterion for doing a mask mandate for a county? Does he have a specific number?
Yes, that comes from Dr. Dobbs, and that's based on the number of cases per 100,000. If you exceed that number, and sometimes it seems like that number's floating. I've heard different numbers at different times, but so far we have not exceeded that. That's the reason we have not been placed under a mandatory mask mandate. Our numbers are going up, but because of our mask mandate already, it's helping keep our overall number down below that per 100,000.
Yeah, we have numerous times been right on the verge, but we're actually not right now. So we're way below the counties that have been added. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that there are now 22 counties that are under, 22 of the 82
Correct.
counties are under a mandatory mask mandate. Do y'all have any questions for Jimmy on numbers? I'm going to go over the hospital capacity numbers with you. If not, thank you, Jimmy. We analyze the hospital capacity daily. In late September, the numbers of COVID patients in the hospital daily hovered in the teens. In October, we hovered in the low 20s, and about 3 weeks ago, the numbers started creeping up, and today we're at 34. Yesterday at Baptist Memorial Hospital, North Mississippi, there were 34 patients hospitalized with COVID, and there were 28 available beds. There's been a lot of rumors, and there always are, but there have been a lot of rumors recently about our hospital is diverting patients, our hospital is full. That's just simply not the case. Of the 24 ICU beds yesterday, 4 were occupied with COVID patients, and there were 12, so half of the ICU beds were available yesterday. There are times that Baptist Hospital is moved to the diversion list, which means that they are not accepting patients from other hospitals. The good news is that they don't wait for the hospital to be full before they divert patients away from our hospital. And that is one thing I'm not sure the public understands. When they see that we're on that diversion list to divert patient transfers from other hospitals, they think, oh no, our hospital's full. No, we were protecting the hospital. The Baptist is protecting the hospital so that it does not become full. The numbers are all fluid, as we've talked about. Hospital capacity, since I spoke with Bill Henning, I'm sure has changed in the past few hours as outpatient surgeries from earlier in the day have gone home and freed up other beds. It's just a very fluid situation. There are times that in the morning they will be on the diversion list, and by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they're no longer on the diversion list. And as Bill was explaining to me, they may have X number of beds available in labor and delivery. Well, they're not going to put COVID patients on the labor and delivery floor. So although those beds are available, so the number may seem larger, there aren't beds available in a different department. So, there are just a lot of factors. It's not as cut and dry as there are this many beds and these are full and what have you. So he did state repeatedly that regardless of where they were on bed count, regardless of where they are on diversions, if you come to the ER, they are keeping you. If you need to be kept. Nobody is being turned away from our emergency room. So, I talked to him about the fact that back in the spring, I knew that they had stopped doing elective surgeries and things. Well, he said that they saw that when they suspended those surgeries in the early spring, the huge influx that they had a few months later was a result of not doing those surgeries over a period of months. And so they saw people who were much sicker coming in several months later. So they are continuing to do those procedures now. And the large majority of those are outpatient. So it's not changing the capacity numbers that much. Most of the transfers, he told me, I asked him where they were coming from, and he said Batesville, Grenada, and the Delta are where we are seeing the largest number of transfers to our hospital. He always tells me that there are about 30% of the patients there from Lafayette County. I asked him, what that number was. Will we remaining about the same? And as of yesterday, 67% of the folks in the hospital were from outside of Lafayette County. So as people see numbers rise and they say, do more, close this, it will not affect our hospital capacity numbers to put more stringent rules in place as long as 70% of the people that are in our hospital are from outside of Lafayette County. And that's something that I think the public needs to understand, is that if we put more stringent policies in place, that does not affect the people that are being transferred here from other counties. So we talked also about vaccinations, just since that's been so in the news the past few days. And he said that they had not heard anything about receiving the vaccinations, no time frames, which one they would get, any of those kinds of things. But they have already, through the Baptist system, worked through all of the logistics. They know that they have the capability of storing even the vaccine that Pfizer has put out that has to be stored at how many degrees below zero? 96 degrees below zero. They have the storing capacity for that. They've already figured out distribution. So just so you know, our hospital is on the ball and figuring those things out so that the day that it is available, they will be able to move forward. He also said, and I thought was encouraging, that they have many new treatment therapies that they did not have in the spring, and so they're seeing better outcomes from patients who are being hospitalized. And so I thought those were encouraging remarks that our hospital administrator made. I do not have anything to propose to you all as far as changes on our guidelines. We are still operating under the governor's Order 1525, which he extended until December the 11th. We have extended that indefinitely. We said that we would talk about it every 2 weeks at our meetings, make changes if we saw they were needed. The only two things that are different on our 12th resolution that we adopted is that we are still having a mask mandate indoors, and we are limiting groups to 10 inside and 25 outside. So I am totally open to OPC. Do we do that under this, right? I'm totally open to any suggestions from board members of considerations of changes. I have gotten several emails from people saying, I wish that you would require masks in gyms. That has really been the topic the past week, has been, you know, as numbers have been increasing, we've had several requests from phone calls and emails asking for there to be masks in gyms. So I just throw that out to y'all. Are there any changes that you all would like to consider? All right, at our last meeting, we talked, Seth Gaines came forward and talked to us about how to proceed with the activity center activities and with our youth basketball. And so Mike is here tonight to go over with us. You all have in your packet the information that OPC developed after their board meeting the other day. If I can catch back up on my agenda here. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Well, that'd be why I can't find it on my packet. Yes, I've seen it already. It just wasn't on this packet. All right.
Well, I have copies if anybody needs one right quick. I can hand those out. And also,
if Michael can get it on this one in front of us,
awesome.
I think that we'll.
Okay, well, like the mayor said, good evening to everybody, but like the mayor said, we had our board meeting yesterday, and from long discussions with our staff and with our board, we present this to you guys today. Before I start with the proposal, I do want to give you guys a little bit of the background on both our activity centers as far as the building occupancy numbers. Right now, the Coach House Center, this includes the gymnasium and also the track. We're looking at a total number of 1,452. At 25%, our number will be 363. Our original activity center, we're looking at occupancy of 299, with that 25% being around 75. Pretty much what we're trying to bring before you today is that we want to, in our safety guidelines, go to where we will have all participants that come through the door, everybody will be wearing masks. Once active participants on the course will not. Scorekeepers will wear masks and all spectators at all times. And also when games are over, our players, coaches, everybody will mask back up as they exit the building. Also, game times will be an hour and a half an hour in playing. We'll do 2 games per court. As soon as the game's in, we will definitely exit everybody out of the building. We have multiple exits in the Coach House Center that they will use to exit out. Once everybody is completely out of the gym, we will start our cleaning and disinfecting process of everything in the building. This goes for both buildings, actually, for the basketball courts. Also, as you know, we have the entry points that they will come in. Players and coaches and family members will come through that door. They will not exit out that door. Like I said, they will exit out through the other doors as well. So there will only be an entry point for the gyms. Also, the glass doors facing the tennis courts on the old original building, that will be the entry point for those. Pretty much what we get down to, we're requesting that we won't oversee the 25%. We were looking at 225 per game period. So and that includes referees, coaches, and our staff in that number. So we won't be overgoing the 25% of that. In the old activity center, our original activity center, it'd be 75. So we won't overgo that. That includes our staff as well. That will be manning that building. So also just to let you know, we have reached out and got information from Mississippi High School Association on how they are doing things with their indoor sports, and we are counting not just the spectators, but we're counting the participants. They're pretty much just looking at the spectators right now. So we're stricter a little bit on that, and then also just so you know that the season won't start until the latter part of January. Right now, we're just trying to start registration, so we'll still be on time. If we need to revisit this, we can come back to you guys and you give us the orders, we'll do what you say.
You saying the end of January?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think we've got enough time to where I think this plan is very thoughtful and very well done. Main thing is just mask up.
Yes, sir.
And in between, so I would say right now we approve this, and if something is to change within the next 2 months, then we can adjust. So I'd say we approve what has been presented.
Mike, okay, I've got a question
Yes,
before
ma'am.
we vote. Okay, so people would start registering now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my concern there, you know, if you look at what the trends are and what the predictions are from Department of Health and other healthcare professionals, they say that we should expect our large increase to be end of December, 1st of January.
Yes.
Now, they said that in October, and we did not see that, so I am not buying into it yet, but with that being a possibility and one that they are strongly suggesting will happen, does it make sense? I think the plan, like Alderman Bailey said, is well thought out, and I think it's as safe as you could possibly operate doing indoor sports at this time. Does it make more sense to wait and let people register at the beginning of January? Does it not cause y'all a lot of extra angst to get all those deposits in and all that and then have to refund it?
Right, this right here, if we start right now registering, this will give us plenty of time to get us prepared for our indoor sports. Not only would we need time to recruit our coaches and volunteers, but also to order uniforms and all of that. So this will definitely give us time. If we need to go back and things change, we can transfer people into a different sport, or we can do refunds. We've done it before. It wouldn't be that bad of a hassle for us.
I mean, I'm just thinking about if you purchase all of those uniforms, I just would hesitate to invest a lot of money in uniforms until we get to the 1st of January. Things are changing weekly. Again, I think the plan looks great. I'm just hesitant to say, yeah, start registering people and understand getting coaches in and that kind of thing, but I hate to see you spend a large amount on uniforms and then have to refund everybody's money.
Yes, ma'am. I totally understand. And uniform is one of our last orders, though. That will be one of the last things we do.
Okay.
And Mike, when you all calculated the occupancy of the Coach Health Center?
Yes, ma'am.
Downstairs, that 953, is that just the courts, or is that the whole downstairs?
That's the whole, from my understanding, that's the whole gymnasium area.
Just the gym?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, are there any other questions? We've got a motion and a second.
I have a question about
Okay.
the motion. Is the motion to approve it, but we're going to look back at it in January?
Now, my motion is to approve the plan as presented, but if something changes within the next 4 weeks, then we have, we always have the ability to pump the brakes.
Right.
It also said we follow schools, and so, I mean, that's something I know that we
Yes, sir.
see following also, is they've always said, schools closed, we're gonna be
Yes, sir.
out, so.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't hear whoever that is.
I think as we have decided that we're gonna reevaluate these COVID-19 guidelines every meeting that we have, that, we will be evaluating, at that time anyway, whatever our first meeting in January is.
My motion is to approve this as presented.
All right, and we have a second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. Braxton, request permission to approve a bicycle policy for the city of Oxford.
All right, this policy is for city employees only. This will aid in our
For city
application.
employees only. There's been some confusion on that, so I want to point that out, that this is a policy for city of Oxford employees only, not for the community.
Right. This will help in our application to become a silver city for the League of American Bicyclists, which will hopefully help us obtain grants in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically just a safety policy for bicyclists.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. All right, request permission to re-advertise a reverse auction for a dump truck for Oxford Utilities, Water and Sewer Division. Rob?
Good evening. I think I included a pretty good description of what happened. We listed the chassis for a dump truck on a reverse auction. We had a couple vendors send specifications. Neither of those met the exact specifications we were looking for. They were going to be too big. We need one just the right size, and we know what that's going to look like. And so since we didn't receive any bids, since we didn't approve those vendors, we'd just like to relist that auction and try that again, and this time reach out to specific vendors who we know will be interested. I don't know why they didn't pay attention to the reverse auction. Thank you.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to accept a utility easement from the University of Mississippi for an underground electrical circuit near Lee Loop and Highway 6.
Yeah, if you recall in our budget hearing for Oxford Utilities, we're looking to underground a line that runs south of Highway 6 from Lee Loop around down Highway 6 to where it crosses over onto university property. We're looking, that's an area it's got two circuits for a portion and then one circuit where it crosses. We just need to get that underground. It's a highly impactful area for outages due to trees falling and limbs falling. It's hard to get in there to cut property. And so we've been working with the university for 9 months or a year to try to get an easement, and finally they came through for us with an easement. And we would just like to start the process to get that work done.
Move we approve. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Matt Davis. Request permission to declare equipment surplus in the Oxford Police Department Parking Division and authorize its disposal.
Got an easy one for you. It's an old cell phone that need to be traded in.
Move we approve.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request approval of a final plat, case 2677, P Ridge Road subdivision for property located at 325, County Road 321, being further described as PPIN 15775. Robert,
Howdy.
how are you?
Good, how are y'all?
Good.
The applicant is requesting approval of a final plat for a detached residential subdivision of 8 lots called P Ridge Subdivision. The property was granted preliminary plat approval in July of 2017. It's about 2.5 acres and is located on the south side of P Ridge Road, right at the city limits. All the lots are larger than 7,200 square foot minimum, the lot size for suburban residential zoning. And engineering has provided comments related to water and sewer utilities, traffic, sidewalks, retaining walls, erosion control and stormwater management, which can be found in the staff report. The planning commission unanimously recommended approval of the request for the final plat in the November Planning Commission meeting with the 5 conditions that are listed in the staff report. The bonds required in conditions 3 and 5 are in hand, and the remaining conditions do not prevent the plat from being approved by the board tonight. The staff and Planning Commission recommend approval of the final plat for P Ridge subdivision with the 5 conditions.
Move we approve the conditions.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Robert. Request approval of the final plat amended for case 2679 Oxford Farms Phase 7 for property located on Oxford Way, being further described as PPINs 8844, 8903, and 18836. Gray?
Hey.
Hey.
The subject property is located north of Oxford Way at the Farmview Drive intersection and measures approximately 17.8 acres. In September, a site plan was approved on this site for a common interest development of 108 dwelling units. The applicant is seeking a plat amendment to modify the water and sewer easements and to make a revision to the east boundary line of the property. At the November Planning Commission meeting, Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the requested plat amendment with the 2 conditions stated in your report.
All right, so staff recommends with 2 conditions. Is there a motion?
Move we approve the conditions.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Consider approval of a request for the extension of city utilities for development outside the city limits of Oxford that includes a preliminary and final plat approval for case 2680 Briarwood Subdivision Phase 2B for a property located at 470 County Road 101, being further described as PPIN 37900. Robert.
Briarwood subdivision is located outside city limits on County Road 101 north of Industrial Park Road. The first phase of Briarwood was approved in December of 2017. Phase 2A was approved in July of 2019, and they're coming back for phase 2B today. Again, Planning Commission unanimously approved in November with the 4 stated conditions. Bond for condition 3 has been finalized.
Okay.
And let me add one thing. On condition 3, that's important. It is contingent on entering into a development agreement that grants provision for sewer to an additional 78 lots, and until that's granted, it is under the original development agreement, not under. I just want to make sure that that's clear on the record.
I'll make a motion to approve.
And sewer capacity is there to grant for 78 additional, lots. All right, so a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Robert. Consider approval of a request for the extension of city utilities for development outside the city limits of Oxford that includes final plat approval for case 2681 Oakmont Subdivision Phase 3 for property located at 470 County Road 101, being further described as PPIN 3332.
This one is for Oakmont, right next to Briarwood. Preliminary plat was April of 2017. 1, 2, 4, and 5 have already gotten final approval. This is for phase 3.
And this also has provision for sewer for an additional 78 lots.
I move we approve.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Request approval for preliminary and final plat for case 2682 FNB Oxford Parkway Branch Subdivision for property located on George G. Patterson Parkway, being further described as PPIN 39662.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is a request for a preliminary and final plat for a 1-lot subdivision. Measures about 1.5 acres. It's located off of George G. Patterson Parkway. It's just north of the new Shell gas station that's being constructed by the roundabout. We are currently evaluating a site plan for this. It's 2 phases. It'll have a new branch of the FNB Bank, and then another building will be constructed at a later date. Engineering provided comments that are stated in your report, and the Planning Commission and the Planning Department staff recommend approval with the conditions noted.
Move we approve the conditions noted. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Request approval of a final plat for case 2684, The Heights, phases 7 and 8, for property located on FD Buddy East Parkway, being further described as PPIN 39642.
It was a busy month at the Planning Commission.
I'll say.
Yeah, it sure was.
So we have a final plat for the Heights phases 7 and 8. It includes a total of 30 single-family lots, 3 common areas. Just want to note that this is actually 3 less lots than what was provided in the preliminary plat. That's not an issue. Engineering did provide comments. There was a condition number 3 from the Planning Commission report regarding bonds being in place for all public infrastructure. It has been satisfied, and an updated plat was provided. Staff and the Planning Commission recommend approval with the conditions noted in the report.
Move we approve with conditions.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, request permission to accept a donation of $150 from the Buchanan family for the benefit of the Oxford Police Department K-9 unit.
Move we approve it.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request approval for the North Central Mississippi Board of Realtors to host the annual Oxford Christmas Parade on December the 7th. And if it is rainy, December the 8th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to accept a contract from Smith Lawn Management LLC for the installation of landscaping at Oxford Fire Station Number 2 based on.
Hello, fire station is coming along. We have a completion date right now of April 20th. It's fire station number 2 on FD Buddy East. I wanted to go ahead and ask for permission to approve landscape quotes and enter into a contract. This was an owner item on the original contract. We received 4 quotes ranging from $24,147.21 to over $60,000. Low quotes from Smith Lawn, and I'm recommending we accept the quote and enter into the contract. About 40% of the funding for the landscape will come from the tree escrow account.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission to accept 2 donations for the purchase of bows for the Christmas wreaths that are around the square. Nice, very nice, of Melissa Swaney and Ann Fair to make a contribution to have those Christmas wreaths get some fluffed up bows. So do we have a motion to accept that donation?
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Ann and Melissa. And then I would ask you to consider 27A to accept a donation of the bows from Discount Building Supply that were added today. They donated those bows to go around the iron fence around City Hall, 31 bows.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission to advertise for M-Trade Park Test Well Project.
Yes, this is a project we've been talking about for a couple of years now. It is budgeted, and we would just like permission to advertise.
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Consider the acceptance of the donation of land and concrete ditch at St. Andrews Circle.
Yes, I would ask that you consider this acceptance. It's approximately 1,350 square feet. It is primarily the concrete ditch, and then there's about a 3-foot strip at the back. As you remember from earlier in the summer, the ditch fell in, and the Cockerhams, we notified them at that time that they actually owned 1/3 of that ditch. They were not aware of that. They contributed to the repair of the fence of the ditch based on their ownership, but they asked at that time that the board might consider allowing them to donate the property to us. And
I don't blame them.
Considering that the ditch has been repaired, the city owns 100% of the ditch immediately adjacent to their property, the fact that we would be able to better maintain the ditch if we owned all of it, and it's very unusual for us to have a ditch immediately adjacent to a road that we don't own to the back side of. So with all of these things in consideration, I do recommend that you accept that donation. Accepting it, you have to make a finding that it will not adversely affect or be an economic detriment to the city. And I think that you can make that finding, especially considering that it has been recently repaired. So I would recommend that you accept a special donation warranty deed for approximately 1,350 square feet from the Cochran family as noted on the attached survey, based on the finding that there is no negative impact to the city in doing so.
So moved.
All right, motion and second. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, consider change order number 3 for 164 days of additional contract time and 0 cost for the Rivers Hill Elevated Tank Project.
Yes, and as you all know, the tank is completed and beautiful on the hill there. The contractor has asked for 164 days of time, which include 44 days of documented weather delays, as documented by the project engineer. They're also asking for 30 days for impacts associated with a worksite fatality, which included time for mourning and also for the investigation to be completed. They are then asking for 90 days associated with impacts of COVID-19. They're asking for a total of 164 days, and they ask that 149 of those days apply towards substantial completion, and then the remaining 15 days go towards final completion. And the difference in those 2 days is the difference in the amount of liquidated damages. The cost, there's a different cost.
So Rihanna, how do you think that's all legit?
I do. We've seen everywhere in town, and of course across the nation, the impacts of COVID. We know that it's made it difficult to work, even for our own forces, to receive materials, to have employees on site. And I do, and that's the bulk of what they're asking for.
So haven't we already granted them 1 extension?
For the, we have not granted this contractor an extension for contract time. No, we've had 2 prior change orders for a light, an FAA light, and for a cell tower ring. Okay. This is their first request for contract time.
I'm not trying to nickel and dime them. I'm just saying I think it's interesting that this request came in exactly at what the liquidated damages would be. And that's why I asked if you thought it was legit.
Yeah.
So it is more, the request is slightly more than the damages. So that is that request. And we did receive the request for the weather days prior to the impacts of Corona. So in mid-March, we got the request for 41 days, and since then there have been 3 more days they've asked for. So.
Okay, what's your desire?
I move we approve.
All right, a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consider the release of bonds to MSL LLC for 1/2 of the unconstructed boulevard section of OUS Drive in Grand Oaks subdivision.
Yes, so this boulevard has had a long history dating back, what I could find, to 2008 with the original site plan for OUS school. At that time, there was going to be a boulevard. Then in around 2012, 2013, the school came for another approval. It still showed the boulevard section. At that time, they were required to have 2 points of ingress and egress because they were a school. There was not an extension of Fazio Drive at that time, but our code did permit that if there was going to be a boulevard, then that would serve as the 2 points of ingress and egress. I think we've since changed that code allowance. However, that was permissible at the time. But also at that time, the city considered that the school, that would be an enormous financial burden on the school. So in 2015, the property was replatted and we secured a bond from MSL LLC for that boulevard section. Since then, we have changed our land development code. We've changed our vision for the city regarding our streets. And so at this point, I don't anticipate us desiring to have a boulevard section of roadway through there. And so the applicant has asked, in consideration of all those things, if we would release their bond and release them of the requirement to build the other half of that boulevard section of roadway. So if you drive OUS Drive now, it looks like a complete street. The pavement's 22 feet wide. It's got sidewalk on one side. The other side would be built in the future. It looks like a street. You wouldn't know driving it that it was not built that there's something missing, really. And so they are asking that we would release them of that bond. I had noted in my report that there was a storm drain that we had not inspected. That inspection has not been completed because the crew that does that inspection has gotten COVID. So we are waiting on that. But I would ask that you grant permission to release or reduce the bond based on the findings of that storm drain inspection, if you agree that there's not a need for a boulevard section on that area of road.
So is it reduce or release?
Well, it would be depending on the storm drain inspection findings. If we find that there's some work that needs to be done on the storm drain that could not be completed before the bond comes up for renewal, then we would reduce it to an amount of 150% of the cost to repair the storm drain. So any findings that we have on that storm drain, so for example, if we find that there's $15,000 worth of work, then we would get a bond for 150% of that. But we would reduce the other amount because they pay their fees based on the amount of the actual bond. So if we only need a bond for, $23,000, then it's better if we reduce it than to have them require a whole year of renewal of a $183,000 bond.
So can we make a motion to release them pending the storm drain?
Yes.
Right, yes.
I think you can. I think that we can release it and then just contingent on any amount that needs to be held for any repairs.
I'm just saying that to keep it from having to come back again.
Yes.
Because if we just reduce it, then they got to come back again. So I've driven by there tons of times, and first of all, there's no traffic on that road, but I'll make a motion that we release pending the storm drain approval.
Second.
All right, any questions or comments?
The other part of the sidewalk we picked up when the other lots are built.
Yes, that'll be a requirement of site plan approval.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Consider bids received for the Oxford Way traffic signal and ADA improvements project.
Yes, we received bids on November 5th. We only received one bid from DeSoto County Electric. That was in the amount of $312,557.45. This project was budgeted in the current fiscal year from the intersection improvement account. It includes the traffic signal work, and then we're also going to do some ADA improvements based on, at the time Hooper Hollow built that sidewalk, we told them put it down there in the bottom. We're going to do some improvements now to get an ADA compliant sidewalk up to the top of the intersection there with the signal. We did only receive one bidder, which we prefer to have multiple bids, but I think this speaks to the work that's going on right now, and contractors are covered up.
Right.
So there are only a few signal contractors in our area, and the fact that we only got one bid just speaks to the fact that they're not looking for work. So
does the price speak to the fact that they're not looking for work?
The price is a little higher. It is, but I don't think that we're going to get any better price by waiting. And I also think that considering the traffic, considering the need, right? I think that it's better to move forward. I don't think we'll get a better result from waiting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Question, Rick?
So we had the $300,000 for the signal and engineering, and then we also had the ADA improvements, which was another 40.
All right, a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Great, thank you. Request permission to release the bond for the sidewalks in Oakmont subdivision phases 1 and 2. Rihanna?
Yes, and this is separate from the phases that you just heard earlier in plats. So we had sidewalk bonds. We approved providing water and sewer, and as part of that, they have to build sidewalk. And so we held a bond for the sidewalk approvals. We accepted the water and sewer in July of 2018, and the bonds are due for renewal. They've asked that we release them. The sidewalk has been constructed with the exception of 2 lots in Oakmont Phase 2. I talked to Joel at the county this afternoon, and he confirmed the county has not yet accepted it. They've got some punch list work on storm drains, but the sidewalk is all in place. So I would still recommend that you reduce the bond to the amount to only hold out what's left of those 2 lots. And I've asked for a revised cost estimate from the engineer for that.
So then we'd be holding out whatever the revised cost estimate is.
Yes, and it'll be a small amount, but we'll hold that until he gets those built. And I would ask that in my motion, I had said that it was contingent on the county accepting the infrastructure. I expected the county to accept it on Monday, but in talking to Joel, he said that they had storm drain work to do. I wasn't anticipating that, and so I would just ask to strike that part. So I would just say that I recommend the reduction of the sidewalk bonds for Oakmont Phase 1 and 2 to amount for 2 lots of sidewalk. Not wording that very well.
All right, are there any questions?
I'll make that motion.
Right, is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I will ask the board to consider an executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We will now consider an executive